World economic crisis and the way out of it.
The whole system of renting an office 4 times higher than you would rent a house leads to the main problem because landlords get to keep most of the cash flow instead of returning or better recycling it to the real economy. Pretty much like the bottleneck effect, too much money flow into their hands and too little gets out. The Waggle experiment proved that practically the less money is recycled, the greater the problem is. Bees, on the other hand, have a perfect recycling system and nature makes the most of it. As we all know, the economy of nature can be cruel sometimes to some of them, but it is always right, even if we humans cannot understand it. That's why bees are around for millions of years and we humans do not know for how much longer will be.
How is the bees' society compared to ours? They are both perfect, but our society is a flaw. The bees have a queen for reproduction and guidance of the hive. We have the United Nations for guidance and for solving problems that our society is. Then there are the drones that they reproduce with the queen and they eat ready-made food and honey that is produced from the worker bees. Their numbers are almost constant all of the time, and when food runs out, the bees send them out of the hive to go elsewhere. Because the population, the hive and the system must be sustained in order for the species, the hive and the community to survive. So, some drones are sacrificed for the good of the many, and that of the species. We have landlords who rent offices and buildings for €20,000 and they get the actual honey that runs out of the market. Each time in constant rate, and increasing annually, these capital funds are reduced, and this is what keeps the national debt and the private sector debt growing. Just look at last year's charts.
Money supply grows and the volume of trade grows, the economy grows, then each and every year steady at 3%, but it is the 3% of the new total, so instead of a straight line it is more like a curve. The same curve that the debt is growing, each and every year. The same as economy grows. We will return to that in a moment. And finally, the working bees that make the honey, eat and work and make the honey that feeds and drives the hive, and society, all the time. They are also responsible for the survival of the species by feeding the queen and the drones. We, on the other hand, have the workers and the businessmen that make all the money and food by labor and the trade profit that pays the rents and the bank interest. As long as the workers produce, they feed the landlords, the bankers and the governments.
When a hive collapses? The hive collapses when honey-producing bees stop working and they don't bring back any food at all, or their population drops under a minimum amount than the hive can sustain. The food is not enough for the drones, the queen and the bees, so the hive collapses. Or, like what happened recently, bees cannot go back to the hive, and they die carrying the food by losing their orientation from mobile cell signals, as some scientists claim. According to experts, if bees were to become extinct, then humanity would perish after just 4 years. If the bee disappeared off the surface of the globe, then man would only have 4 years of life left. No more bees, no more pollination, no more plants, no more animals, no more man, said Albert Einstein. But I think it is more than that.
When our society collapses? Our society collapses when the working force stops working. More unemployment leads to less money circulation, less jobs, less corporations, less food. More disasters, more urban riots and destructions that are currently in a small scale, but they will become in time larger and more widespread, and then people cannot pay the banks, so they are foreclosed. Then the banks will be foreclosed, and then the governments will be foreclosed, and then they will be famine, fear and death. Mankind will do what they know best, world wars. Instead of blaming each other for the economical disaster, they blame the refugees presently in Greece. National leaders will start rising with a tendency of nationalism, and every country in the world will become again isolated in their own currency and problems.
History repeats itself, Herodotus said. That's what happened last time, right? You know, after 1929, the World War II. Everything lost value, especially real estates, and we started from scratch. Can we fix that? Yes, we can. It's very simple actually. No need for war and human casualties. This problem of economic crisis was created only because we used the old and failed system of feudalism that existed until the late 1800s. And every empire which used that also collapsed, and now we've done something even worse. We used the feudalism system and mixed it up with democracy and modern economy. How idiotic is that, really? Tell me. It is crazy to give a chance to that system again and again. So far, no one came up with a real solution. I was waiting and hoping that someone else will think about it, but to no avail. Everything from now on, according to my calculations, start to turn really bad. Economists that have the numbers in front of them will understand what I am talking about. So, listen carefully to this solution to the problem.
For starters, let's return to the previous subject. Neither the bankers nor the state but landlords, also known as the drones of our society, are the ones who created this problem unwillingly. The bankers and the state just sustained it. Why? Because they simply have no knowledge of it. Not even in their wildest dreams could they have imagined that. This is the main problem. The flaw in the system that created the entire problem. Dear bankers and political leaders, what the landlords do not want you to know is that
when a bank approves a house loan or an enterprise office loan with a 3% interest rate for a house that cost €240,000, then the bank will take their money back with interest in 30 years, so the bank will collect about €540,000. 240,000 capital plus 300,000 interest. But in 30 years. One would say this is robbery. Yeah, right. Wrong. Let me show you what a real robbery is. 20,000 per month, for rent, by 12 months equals 240,000. By 30 years equals €7,200,000. That's without the real estate buying amount. The revenue is $6,960,000. 40% might go to taxes that they never pay in my country, even if the owners do not tax evade. It is too much in 30 years. 6,960,000 minus 40% tax equals €4,176,000.
it is impossible for an individual to make more money than a bank does. So, why everybody thinks that the bankers are so rich and the state is imposing taxes to enterprises, banks and workers? All these years everybody blames the companies, the banks and the state. But landowners get away with it and gain more money and more land.
This is the real problem of the system. As for the money debt relating videos you've watched before on the internet, they only say part of the truth. For example, Crisis is like a children's game called Musical Chairs. Music is playing and when it stops everyone must sit down on their chairs, but one is always left standing. The number of chairs is always one less than the number of children at play, so one kid is always left standing. In the end only one remains. Foolish. Yes. Einstein once said, "The most difficult questions have the simplest solutions." Here are two examples. First, in tic-tac-toe there is a tie when both rivals are equal. So, what do? You don't play that game at all. Second, the musical children's game with the chairs is the same. You simply don't stop the music. And you keep dancing on and on, so everybody is happy. Simple as that. Mathematics-wise, in money and debt, capital funds plus interest, you need to add a factor to the equation that's left behind that they didn't compute at all. What is that? Working hours, of course.
Real money exists, but interest does not. Interest is thin air, just a number that must be transformed to money and so on. Right? Check this out. Does the sun cost anything to us? Does the wind that blows cost us anything? No, it doesn't. So there is an economical air energy that belongs to no one and can be transformed to money, and you pay the interest from there, but in order to do that you have to remove many private sector individuals who gather money in stockpiles and let it there to accumulate, and they do not recycle it to real economy. So, like in a beehive, the number of drones keeps growing, but the working bees' numbers stay the same in order to stabilize the production of food. There is also a reduction in the working force population. And this is very bad because less working hours means less money production. Oops! What did I say? Yes, the least expensive and the one that costs nothing to us.
Honey to the bees is what working hours are to us, which means that here the equation is in equilibrium. Capital plus working hours equals capital plus interest. As long as the money being borrowed is the same as spent, and the working hours paid is almost the same as the amount of interest, then the result is always zero, a cycle similar to the recycling process.
No crisis. Less money for individuals and more money to enterprises that will make a boom in production and development. Finally, we can recycle the bad history of our planet, or we can go forward and witness the greatest evolution of mankind, and that can be done with mutual understanding, world freedom and democracy for everyone, both men and women of our planet. Everybody can be happy, because we are just a grain of sand in the vast universe. And we need to grow and multiply. Just watch the linked video on YouTube, about how small we are. We have to put aside our petty differences and work for the same reason, the survival of our species.
Unfortunately, some people might not like this idea, but according to calculations, it is the only viable solution to this problem, once and for all, and there's no time to waste.
Have a nice day all. And watch yourselves. Just food for thoughts. Thanks for watching.